Have you ever looked at someone in charge and thought, wait them? How did they get here? You know the type. They speak with unwarranted confidence, make reckless decisions with a smile, and yet somehow they sit at the head of the table while the quiet, thoughtful ones fade into the background. If you've ever felt invisible in a room while lesser minds took the spotlight, this isn't just bad luck. It's a pattern. One so old, so entrenched in human nature, that Machiavelli himself wrote about it centuries ago, and if you don't see it for what it is, you might spend your life wondering why wisdom never seems to win. The dangerous comfort of certainty. Here's something that will sting. Human beings are not wired to follow the best leader. We are wired to follow the loudest one. In The Prince, Machiavelli didn't pretend politics was a noble art. He stripped away the illusions. He understood a grim truth. People are drawn to certainty, even when it's hollow. We would rather be confidently misled than tentatively guided toward truth. Think about how this plays out in everyday life. In a meeting, one person speaks quickly and forcefully, laying out their plan with no sign of doubt. Another offers a more thoughtful, nuanced approach, but it's wrapped in hesitation, full of "I think" and "maybe" and "it depends." Guess whose idea gets remembered? It's not that we consciously admire foolishness, it's that confidence feels like safety, and in a world that's uncertain, safety wins over subtlety every single time. We are pattern-seeking creatures living in chaos. When someone claims to have all the answers, our brains experience relief, a chemical drop of dopamine telling us we've found stability. But that stability is often just a well-polished illusion. The shadows where the wise hide. Here's the part no one likes to admit. The wisest among us often disqualify themselves from power. They hesitate. They question. They weigh the moral cost of their actions, all traits that make for good leadership, but terrible campaigning. Plato called this the philosopher's curse. The people most fit to lead are the least interested in ruling. In the Republic, he envisioned philosopher kings, rulers who didn't seek power, but accepted it as a duty to serve the greater good. Yet even in his ideal world, such people would have to be persuaded, or even compelled to step into leadership. Now imagine that in the messy reality of human society, while the thoughtful ones are still asking, "Do I deserve to lead?" the ambitious ones are already shaking hands, making deals and building alliances. They're not waiting for permission, they're taking the throne before anyone else even moves. And because the wise are too busy considering the moral implications, the field is left open for those who never ask such questions. The hidden psychology. Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon. The Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the tendency for people with low ability to overestimate their competence and for those with high ability to underestimate themselves. Picture this: a beginner chess player learns a few opening moves and suddenly feels unstoppable. They start talking like a grandmaster. Meanwhile, a true expert studies the game for decades and still feels humbled by its depth. In life, the beginners often talk the loudest. The experts? They're busy thinking. This plays out in boardrooms, in politics, in every group project you've ever been in. The least qualified person in the room will often speak with the most conviction, while the most qualified will drown in self-doubt. And because humans are wired to respond to social cues, confidence often beats competence, at least in the short term. History's uncomfortable pattern. If you think this is just a modern issue, history would like to disagree. Consider Nero, the Roman emperor who allegedly played music while Rome burned. Was he truly a great leader? No, but he knew how to perform confidence and grandeur in a way that kept him in power for years. Or Caligula, who was so convinced of his own authority that he appointed his horse as a consul, not as a joke, but as a twisted display of dominance. Fast forward to the 20th century. Idi Amin in Uganda rose to power through sheer charisma and military bravado, promising prosperity while dismantling the nation's stability. Even in democratic societies, we've seen leaders rise not because they were wise, but because they were skilled at condensing complexity into digestible, emotional slogans. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the theologian who stood against Hitler, warned about this in his theory of stupidity. He argued that stupidity is more dangerous than malice, because you can reason with malice, but stupidity holds fast to its illusions, unchallenged and unshakable. When a foolish but confident person gains power, they become a magnet for others seeking certainty. And the damage they can do is amplified by the loyalty of the crowd.
Why we keep falling for it. It's tempting to point the finger at them.
The bad leaders, the opportunists, the fools in high places. But the truth is, it's us. We hand them the crown. We let appearances seduce us. We mistake charisma for competence. We cling to the comfort of someone saying, "Follow me, I know the way," even if the way leads straight into ruin. Our brains evolved for survival, not truth. In the chaos of life, we look for the person who seems most certain, because certainty feels like a lifeboat in a storm. We like to think we choose leaders based on logic. In reality, most of us are seeking relief from uncertainty, and in that search, we're willing to overlook warning signs that in hindsight seem obvious. The twist no one tells you. Here's the uncomfortable part. If you're watching this and thinking, "Yes, but I'm not like that," you might be exactly the kind of person the world overlooks. Not because you're unworthy, but because you've been taught to believe that truth speaks for itself. It doesn't. It never has. Truth is not self-delivering. It needs a messenger, and if the wise refuse to speak loudly, the foolish will fill the silence. This isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about understanding that integrity and visibility are not the same thing. The world doesn't automatically reward quiet competence. You have to make it seen. The Machiavellian lesson. Machiavelli's world was brutal, but he wasn't glorifying cruelty. He was revealing the rules of a game most people didn't even know they were playing. His message wasn't become a tyrant. It was know how power really works, or you'll lose to someone who does. That doesn't mean abandoning humility. It means learning to project certainty without losing honesty. It means understanding that humans don't just follow wisdom, they follow the appearance of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius understood this. Though he never sought the throne, once he had it, he carried himself with quiet but undeniable strength. He spoke softly, but he did so from a place of moral authority that others could feel. Even in philosophy, appearance matters. A great idea whispered into the void changes nothing. A good idea spoken clearly and confidently can change the course of history, bringing it back to you. So ask yourself, where in your life are you letting someone else take the reins because you didn't want to seem pushy? Where are you biting your tongue while a louder, less capable voice leads the way? This isn't about arrogance, it's about responsibility. Every time you step back to avoid discomfort, you create space for someone who might not deserve it. Every time you stay silent, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're contributing to the rise of the wrong person. Maybe you've watched a project collapse because no one challenged a bad idea. Maybe you've seen a friend get hurt because no one stood up to the wrong person. Maybe you've stayed silent, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're contributing to the rise of the wrong person. Maybe you've stayed silent in a meeting because you didn't want to cause drama. But silence is a choice, and it has consequences. A final thought. We keep waiting for the right people to rise naturally. But history tells us they rarely do. Power doesn't flow to the deserving. It flows to those willing to reach for it. If you see the world being led astray, don't just whisper in the shadows. Step forward. Speak with the clarity you wish existed. Carry your wisdom with enough force that it can't be ignored. Because if you don't, someone else will, and they might burn the whole thing down while the rest of us are still applauding their confidence.